Welcome to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast.
Many thanks for joining us on the Journal of Biophilic Design today. We're really excited to be joined by Jennifer Bryan, who I know quite a few of you are going to recognize her name. She is a TEDx speaker. She's also an author. She is founder of the AB Change Consultancy. She is known as well as the Change Master, driving people-centric resilient change by putting people at the heart of decision making, which people who are involved in biophilic design will be really thrilled to know, because that's what we're all about, people-centric design. So if we can kind of use a few tools that you're going to give us in this podcast to kind of help persuade our clients to get biophilic design into spaces and designs and planning and all that kind of thing, then that's great. So she's worked with household names like Philips and Fujitsu, RBS, Barclays, Lloyds Bank, Sky, loads of people. Really, Jennifer, it's a privilege to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's actually a privilege to be here. I love coming and speaking to people about people-centric change. I'm very passionate about it. And you and I have met a few times at other events, and I very much enjoyed our conversation. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. And obviously we've met particularly at Workplace Trends, and
Yes.
you are speaking at Workplace Trends on Wednesday, the 18th of October in London. People, if you've never been before, you must go. It's great for networking, of course, but it's fantastic for learning about workplace trends, change trends, ideas, inspiration. And Jennifer, you're going to be speaking about adopting foresight into people-centric change at 11 o'clock on the Wednesday the 18th. By the way, I'm going to put a link to the how people can register on the website.
Okay, great.
You're going to be telling us about that shortly, so thank you. But before we launch into that, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously I know you're not from around here. you're not local, but maybe also what got you into change, if that's okay.
Yes, of course, of course. No, I do say to people, I'm from a little island in the middle of the Atlantic called Jennifer's Island, and that's why my accent goes all over the place. I grew up in the States, but I live here, and I'm British. How I got into change was very much through a HR learning and development route, and I had started designing and delivering some training courses, and I was asked by a telecoms company and technology company. Really, what I started to notice is that in the most simplest of ways, there is no change without learning, and there's no learning without change. The two go very much hand in hand. And so when I was talking about learning and doing and teaching people to go through change, and as a result of that, that just became very synonymous with everything. And hence I very smoothly moved into the change world.
Yeah. And obviously you speak all over the world with it, and you speak to different clients and things. And obviously you must see the penny drop sometimes, like you say, it's about knowledge.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It is about knowledge, but it's about, I mean, the penny drops many times when people just, they're trying to do the best they can. It's not that they're not trying to do things in an unpeople-centric way. It's just they don't really think about it from that people-centric perspective. And it's not until you go, well, how do you think they might think or feel? What do you mean? It's going to be efficient. It's going to make it easier. I said, but do they know that? And do they really want that? And you're like, hadn't thought it that way. It's things like that. And sometimes, the answers to the questions we're seeking are really obvious and they're right there in front of us, but we just don't always see them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could explain what is it that you do? Obviously you help people with change and implement change, and from a leadership point of view. Can you maybe just sort of kind of give us an overview of what you do, please, so people can understand? Thanks.
Yes, of course. So I help people on the leading change aspects, and I do it in loads of different ways. I do a lot of coaching and mentoring, and I have, as a result, a lot of coaching and mentoring packages and things that I offer. I also consult and work with organizations to build that change muscle internally. Because from my perspective, when I'm consulting, I'm there as a temporary resource. And, and hence it's about building the internal resource that's going to stay. From that perspective. And so so obviously I do consulting work. I also write a lot of articles. I've done lots of videos. I do speaking engagements, and come and do training courses. There's a couple of training courses that are kind of signature pieces that I do, but I also tailor things to what's going on with the organization itself. What are the big challenges and barriers that they are dealing with when it comes to change? Is it their senior leaders that are struggling with it? Is it the middle managers? Actually, is it the line managers, or is it building a change network and the champions and helping them? And so it can be all of those. So that's all the different ways in which I help them from that standpoint. But the big thing in all of it, in all of those different areas, it's very much about helping people understand what I call the end person in mind approach. And what that's all about is, if you think about the person who is the furthest away from the decision-making room, and I usually use a few avatars when I talk about that. I have Sam in Norwich, Jane in Tay, and Maria in Brazil. And essentially, I will use those avatars to say, what is it about Sam in regards to this change? How is he thinking and feeling about life right now? What's going on for him? And when that initial moment, when he first hears about the change, whether it's at the water cooler or a town hall or an email or a poster or the gossip or whatever, when he first hears about it, if you can make that initial moment for Sam positive, then there is a really high probability you will have a positive initial moment for everybody else in between. And that's the first big hurdle when it comes to change.
It's kind of tying in really with what you're potentially going to be speaking about, or not potentially speaking about, you are speaking about, but potentially tying in with that.
Yes.
About this adopting foresight. So before you open your mouth and before you even make that change, if you're the business, if you're about to implement that change, it's adopting foresight. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're speaking on there and what you're going to be covering, please?
Yes, of course. So last year, I embarked on a research project in collaboration with Henley Business School and at Reading University, and a futurist named Steve Wells. Steve and I have worked quite a lot together, actually, in bringing foresight and change together. And what the research project was all about was working with some of the members, which is the organizations that are associated with the research forum at Henley, and helping them adopt foresight. And it was a volunteering project. And what I'm going to be sharing at the summit is actually the findings of that, of what organizations, how did they find doing that from that standpoint. And there's some very key findings. I don't want to spoil things from that standpoint, but there's some really key findings of what they found difficult in doing it, and what they found easy from that standpoint. And so that was really quite telling. And I think it's synonymous to a lot of organizations, I think, find just leading change, much less trying to bring foresight into change as well.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what the research results are and what you found. And again, just people, in case they've fast forwarded to this point, Jennifer's going to be speaking at the Workplace Trends Conference in London on the Wednesday, the 18th of October, 2023, in case you're listening to this next year. Lovely. Obviously this is about biophilic design here. And before we've spoken in the past about biophilic design. I know you love the whole kind of concept of nature inspired design and biophilia. You yourself have experienced the difference, being in one location and being moved to a place where there were sort of biophilic elements in. Can you just kind of just tell us how that felt for you and where it was you were working?
Yeah, where I was at, I was working with a central government department, and we were in this building, and it was old, it was dirty, it was dark. There was no biophilia at all whatsoever. There was instead lots of boxes everywhere. There's lots of cabinets and junk, as far as just stuff, and it was depressing to work in, to be fair. And as a result, whenever there was even the remotest opportunity to go out of the building, because there was no places to go and meet except in meeting rooms and formal meeting rooms, and they'd be big and this, that, and the other. So whenever you just had a catch-up meeting or whatever, you're like, let's go out, let's go to the coffee shop. And you would just go. You'd get out of Dodge just as quick as you could. Because it was really depressing, really depressing. Then the department decided to move into it was a brand new building, and it was light, it was airy, there was so much light coming in, there was lots of biophilia everywhere, and all of the communal spaces, and then at the end of a bank of desks, there'd just be a plant of some description here, there, and it was just so much nicer to work in. As a result, you could end up staying in the building the whole time and not even realize it to a degree. And it just made all the difference in the world. And everybody just you just kind of went, huh, rather than. So from a feeling perspective, it was just a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it really makes a difference, doesn't it, when you've experienced it? And particularly like those buildings that were built in and kind of still operating from the 80s, really, you know, even though we sort of, you know, they might have sort of titivated a little bit, maybe change the carpet if we're lucky, you know, you know, but tends to be still of that mindset, doesn't it? Because it's just replacing, when something breaks, they just replace it with the same or similar, rather than we can do something different.
You know, and actually in this country we've got a lot. 80s, it would be quite modern in some cases. I worked for a bank, and very big bank, and I was in an office, and again it was like a bunker. You know, it's the biggest bunker that I have ever come across, because it was it was really long, but again, it was dark. There was no biophilia. It was the most dirtiest office I ever worked in as well. Chairs were broken all over the place. There was you just were like, yeah, can we go somewhere else?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's not going to make you do your best work, is it? You know,
no, it really affects productivity. It really does. And it's you have to wonder, what is it why people think that just making do and oh, that'll, okay, yeah, that chair is a little broken, but it's fine. It's like, come on, this is your work home.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's
to a
like a home,
degree,
isn't it? You're there for hours, so
you are, and it, a workplace is an investment, and you need to actually invest in your investment. You wouldn't live in a house necessarily. I mean, I guess some people I'm sure do, but given a choice, you wouldn't just sit in a house that hasn't been touched from a decorative perspective since the 50s or 60s. You would do something to it. You'd paint the walls, you put some new carpet in, little things that you can do quite easily. You'd get some new lamps in, things like that.
Yeah.
Why not the same with your workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with all the research that's been done from this point of view as well, we know that it increases productivity and improves well-being and mental health and creativity and all those things, that reduces presenteeism and absenteeism and all the other isms as well that go along with those things. But obviously you are an expert in sort of change and kind of encouraging people to think differently in order to bring about this change. So just sort of following on from what we're saying, really, is how do we get those managers, those people, those business owners to change? I mean, maybe first of all, we could say, why is it that people resist change? I mean, what's going on for them sometimes? Is there, I mean, obviously, it's always going to be different for different scenarios. I suppose some people, their hands are tied, they don't have the control of the budgets, but those who do, and it's in their remit. And like we say, some people go to the guys and say, oh, we're going to put some plants in, we're going to have natural light, we're going to change the light bulbs, we're going to be amazing, it's going to be fantastic. But they still say, yeah, but that's fluffy. And yeah, well, that's not really important. And then they dismiss it and don't even listen. How do we, I mean, what's going on for them? First of all, have we got any sort of insights into what might be going on?
Yeah. I mean, there are 8 different reasons why people resist change. So,
Okay.
but I'm going to put that aside. And what it really boils down is people understanding the so what.
Yeah.
From that standpoint. And what many times happens is when we are experts in our area, or even just work and do something every day, all day, every day, we forget that other people aren't in that same space, and we need to as a result be able to articulate that so what, but also it needs to be that so what for them.
Yeah.
So when it comes to helping leaders and managers, really understanding that it's not just fluff, from that standpoint, it's actually getting them to visualize and understand it from a slightly different angle. Because if we're just telling them, then it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. From that standpoint. So what I would really recommend is get them to stop and think about something in a different way, and flip it around. So for example, you say to them, right, when did you last go on holiday? And where was that? Oh, it was at the beach, or it was a hiking holiday, or it was camping, or it was, I said, and why did you decide to go there? Oh, we really like the trees, the mountains, the ocean. I like to hear da 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 da. I said, wouldn't it be great if you could bring elements of that into the workplace? Because if that's where you want to go and relax and you enjoy, and that's what it de-stresses you, wouldn't it be great if you could have an element of that every day you're in the office? And that's when they can go, ah, okay. So it's just taking the element, and it's, instead of telling, it's asking questions. And because then they are in charge of the answers and coming up with the solutions themselves. And they go, oh, well, maybe we could get some more light in, or different light bulbs that then make us feel this, or we can bring some plants, and maybe we should have some flowers, and maybe this, that, the other, perhaps fruit. Is fruit a good thing? Should we, and then they start going, oh, well, and they start thinking, you get their imagination going, and that's when you actually really get them to change, from that standpoint, because just telling them isn't going to work.
No,
at the
exactly.
end of
Just
the
get
day.
them to buy in, really, kind of get them to almost come up with the ideas. And
Exactly. So it's going into their world, and you can only go into their world by asking questions.
That's very true, actually. Well, that's really interesting about the the reasons why people resist change. You said there are more or less 8 reasons, and I know you've got a book, sort of leading people in change, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But can you tell us a little bit, maybe a couple of reasons why people resist change, and a little bit about what your book's about as well?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, I mean, people will resist change, as I said, for a whole host of different reasons. Sometimes it's because they don't understand the change. Sometimes it's because it's how they've perceived it, or how it's been approached as well. So, and then there's, of course, a lot of other areas where it's, fear or emotional, and it's, oh, we don't do that around here. kind of scenarios, so historical. So there's several different reasons. And what the thing that about resistance that's really, really key is so many people are afraid of the resistance. That's one of the key elements when it comes to change. Like, oh, I don't want to deal with the resistance, the big R word, and so forth. And what I say to people is actually, resistance is fine. You don't need to worry about it. It's okay. It's actually very human to resist, even positive change. If you suddenly won the lottery, you're not going to go, oh yay, straight away. You're going to go, wait a minute, did I get that right? Is that am I no. Let me that's resistance. So even if it's a positive change, we will resist. So it's fine. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to be afraid of it. It's human. The only thing you need to understand is where it may be coming from. Because when you understand where it may be coming from, then you actually can start to manage it. So using the scenario I just shared with you in regards to asking questions about really understanding what makes the leader tick from that standpoint. That is actually understanding where they are coming from. And hence you can underpin from that what might be the reason why they are resisting. And that's why asking those questions is really poignant. And you take them on a bit of a journey from that standpoint. And you say, so where did you go on holiday? Why did you go there? What is it you like about that? And you go, wouldn't it be great to have an element of that at work so that you can experience it every day? Who's going to say no to that?
Yeah, exactly. So it's encouraging them to really, like we said earlier, for them to make the decision, almost really to come up with the ideas, to kind of steer them, get them to understand it, so ask the questions, understand why it is that they're resisting the change, and then kind of inspiring them to do different, I suppose.
Well, it's not just inspiring to do different. It's, as you said, it is about understanding where they're coming from. But then once you understand where they come from, then you can start to think, okay, how can I help them start to think slightly differently? So if it's, because it may be that the way you approached it with change and they're just looking at cost, the fluff, I guess make everybody and this, that, and the other. Well, that can be the change approach and how it was done, or how they heard it, so how they perceived it from that standpoint. Or they've gone, well, we've never done that around here before, why do we have to suddenly do that now? So from a historical perspective, or maybe it's just a fear of, well, yes, we put this stuff in, but what if someone's allergic to this, that, and the other, and then I've got to deal with that, and that's opens up a whole nother can of worms. And so it's about understanding where they are coming from, and that way we can use a multiple of different tactics which are outlined in the book to actually approach and manage the change, because that's all we have to do when it comes to resistance. It's about knowing where it's come from so that we can manage it. Because at the end of the day, it's going to happen, so it's fine. It is what it is. It's human. It's part of our instincts, part of our makeup. From that standpoint, we started from when we were toddlers, and we're two going, why? We never got rid of that. We still want to know why,
Yeah, it's true. And actually it's funny because obviously I'm producing this journal of Biophilic Design, the ebook and the printed version and these podcasts, and it is because of that. It's because people go, well, when I'm they go, why do I need to do it? Why do I need to bring that in? So
exactly.
the way I've sort of divvied it up, there's one on healthcare, there's one on the workplace, there's one on home, so all these different designers, and there's one on creativity, so they can literally just get hold of the journal and just stick it in their face and say, look, there you go, there's a whole bunch of evidence and case studies. If you were going to give any designers kind of like some little elements in their little toolbox, as it were, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the sort of toolbox of persuasion, which I
Yes.
kind of like the idea of. Um, what advice would you give them? I know you sort of touched on quite a few things here, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know, what sort of key things would you say?
Right. So I would say there's three key words you need to be able to really know, and not from a fluffy perspective of efficiencies, effectiveness, productivity. No, it needs to be from the heart of this individual, and that's going to sing for people.
Yeah.
And that is, first of all, you need to know why, what is it you're trying to do and why from that standpoint. Secondly is why now? Why not 6 months ago or in 6 months' time? Why does it need to be now? And thirdly, how are people going to think and feel about it? Is this something they really want? Is this something that they see as a nice to have? Is this something they see as a complete waste? Why are you even bothering? So, how do people think and feel about it? You need to know the answers to those three questions. And that is really, really key when it comes to helping people on the journey and change and start to change their, because when you know the answers to those questions, you can actually start to, first of all, understand things from their perspective and understand from their arena. So going back to that in person and mind approach. And when you've got that, then you can start to say, okay, well, based on that, this is how we should actually be. This is what we need to say. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to say it, how we need to do it, because that's really, really key.
Like, you know, the whole thing with biophilic design, the time is now. There's so much information on why we need it, the whole sustainable, the SD, you know, the sustainable development goals, all these things, trying to
Oh,
reach,
yeah.
you know, net zero by 2030. Biophilic design really supports that. It helps. You know, there are so many reasons why we need it. So that's really good. Those are three simple questions that you've suggested, I think, are really good for people to hang the purpose and the incentives as well.
Yeah, but they also need to really come from the heart. And you know, the data and the stats are great, and that's something we need to back it up, but we need to actually be able to articulate it. Why is it that Maria in Brazil should really care about this? What is it about what's going on in her world that this is going to make a really big difference, and she needs to care about it because of.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to ask you the last question in a minute, the magic question I ask everybody. But before we go, is there anything that you would like to add?
Oh, goodness. I think it's very much about, I mean, we've talked about it throughout this entire podcast, but, you know, it's about really, really understanding that change is about people. And that's a thing that I think a lot of people go, yeah, 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 I know. But it's about understanding that when it comes to people, there's no formula for people. And there is no one way answer either. And that's challenging and it's hard. So the big key is if getting to understand the people and that a lot of the answers there in the culture of the organization, you just go, you stop, you sit in the cafe or you sit in the middle and you just watch how people work, how they're reacting, what's going on for them, how are they feeling, are they feeling anxious because there's the marketplace isn't buoyant at the moment, or are they feeling really quite fabulous because things are going great for them, or are they stressed out because things aren't working? You know, just stop, look around, see what all is going on for people. Because although we can't sit there and say, all right, that works for Joe, that works for Maria, that works for Simon, that works for Len, that works for Amit, that works. You know, there's, you know, in an organization, there's too many people. There's a lot more people than there are us. But the more we can think about them and try and understand what we think could be going on for them, then better we will be equipped. And also, don't forget, you could actually just go and ask them. So just go and ask a few people. It doesn't have to be some great big huge focus group set up and this, that, and the other. You could just walk up and say, you know what? If there was a few plants, would you like that? What would, if you could change anything in this workplace, in this setting, what would it be? And that actually is really powerful data, because then got the voice of the people, and some real anecdotal to also then take to the leaders and say, you know what, this is what your people want. They've said it.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to say, Joe, do you mind if I quote you here? I'll just say, project manager from such and such said, blah, blah, blah. But if you can go and ask, and if Joe is happy for you to use that as a quote, yeah, I think it'd be great if we had this. We say, do you mind if I actually share that with other people, Joe? Yeah, whatever, fine. Then great. Or actually, not so sure. You're like, okay, how about if I just say project manager? Okay, fine. Yeah. There's a few of us. So it's go and ask. Yeah. Stop, take a look around, and go and ask.
It's really good advice. And I was just thinking, just as you're saying, I was reflecting on, I've interviewed quite a few people now, and architects and designers particularly, and even planners, sort of town city planners. But the ones that are really successful, and the people, and those designers that are really successful, they engage the staff. It's not just the person who's employed them or kind of commissioned them. They've actually like you just said. So that's just such sound advice, Jennifer. Thanks so much. And
no worries.
And the whole thing as well about this sort of foresight. I'm just going to read the thing out again, but you are speaking at Workplace Trends on Wednesday, the 18th of October, 2023. The link is in the spiel that goes with this the blog, with the podcast. I know what I'm doing. So people do come along and listen to the research that she's been conducting, and it's about adopting foresight into people-centric change, and it promises to be a really, really, really good discussion. And obviously Jennifer will be there all day, so you can collar her and ask her advice. I've said it now, so she's now going to have to ask me. So make sure you come along, and we're going to be there as well, so do come. So Jennifer, last question, final magic question. If you could paint the world with a magic brush of biophilia, what would it look like?
Oh, it would it'd be a beach, that's for sure. I love a beach, a sandy beach. Yes. With crystal clear blue waters and loads of foliage behind. So you have here I'm going into detail now. So you've got your crystal clear azure blue waters, and with this really lovely soft sand, and where you can lay out and just enjoy. And then right behind you, you've got lots of tall palm trees and foliage, and it's gone out of my hibiscus. Hibiscus are my favorite flower, and so lots of hibiscus all around. That's, to me, is divine.
Thank you for listening to the Journal of Biophilic Design podcast.